Great. So it looks like people have started to make their way in. We have good crowds, so we don't want to keep everybody waiting. Thank you guys for joining. Today, it's part of our post-IDFA Survival Guide series. We're going to be talking about harnessing creative level data. I'm Matt Skernick, product growth lead here for EMEA in Bidalgo, and I'm going to pass it off to Felix to introduce himself also.
Hey, how are you guys? I'm Felix. I'm the VP Marketing of Gigantic. We're a mobile game developer, which have a super cool game, which I'll call you about later. And let's get started.
Yeah, so we're lucky to bring Felix on. Gigantic is doing some really cool stuff, both around creative. I mean, not to mention how amazing their app actually is. But let's kind of move to the agenda here, just to give you guys a little map of where we're going to be. And so we're going to start with what is rest in peace to IDFA? Why are we talking about this? Now that user level data is gone, we'll move to building on creative level data. We'll talk a little bit about how you can do this, what this actually means. Creative is a big word, and there's a lot of parts to it. From there, we're going to go to a winning strategy. Felix is going to talk a bit about Gigantic, how they made this transition, how they go about continuing to win, utilizing their strategies. And at the end, we'll take some questions from the crowd and go through anything you guys want to go deeper on or clarify. So I think in order to set the stage, we have here goodbye IDFA, hello creative. What does that mean, really? We've seen the industry go through a number of changes in the last year or two. It started with more automation, things like AAA, UAC, making it harder to get creative data or get user data in general. And with that, we've now seen the loss of user identifiers. It started in iOS recently. We can only assume this will happen to Android in the coming years. And for a long time, these identifiers, these user identifiers, were the cornerstone of user acquisition. And now, without permission to track, marketers are really having a hard time accurately tracing the journey of a user from the first time they click through the actions they take to when they churn or their retention ends. And tracking all these things, connecting marketing to in-app analytics has become a lot harder because there's no longer that deterministic link. So this has been handled by different people and different ways, different industries. Felix, what does this mean for you guys?
It wasn't easy. The loss of IDFA definitely changed the way we look at data and optimize, because basically the entire traffic appears as organic, which we're not used to it. And suddenly, like metrics like CTR and CPI becoming more and more important and significant, even more than they were before. We basically relying on the data we have, and we're completing the rest with assumption. This is how we're trying to overcome the frustration.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that these changes impacted everybody a little bit differently. The different metrics you might use might be different depending on how you built out your conversion schema with SK Ad Network. But everybody's had to reinvent or re-educate, kind of from the UA side to the creative side to the marketing tech side, how they're buying media. How do you judge efficiency? How do you measure where you want to invest more? And at least on our end, we think, given that there's now a lot fewer areas that advertisers control with automation, AAA, UAC, a lot of less targeting, and I think you'll talk a little bit about some of the changes you guys went through on the targeting side also. But with automated bidding and targeting, now your main lever that you have is around creative, which is really the third pillar of marketing, the ad creative assets, and they're still the last thing that advertisers fully control. And so let's go a little bit more into what that means. So when we talk about how effective a current marketing budget is, we're seeing a few different things happening. Expenses are growing. For a lot of people, their main channels are becoming more expensive. The visibility in those channels is decreasing, whether it be on the targeting side, the bidding side, the auction side, or the user identifier side now. And that also means the control is diminishing too. We're seeing a lot more click and forget automation. in campaigns or in ads. Where in the past it was very hard to scale to several $1,000s a day, a lot of bid budget changes, lots of clicks, lots of adding creatives. Now with a few clicks, you can now be at a few $1,000s. Whether that's an efficient few $1,000s is a different story. So that's why we're saying now, creative is really the key to driving growth. It's not going anywhere. It will always be owned by you. It's not impacted by any of the changes that we've seen around the different platform wars or how people are doing things. And we're seeing marketers start to understand this more. And how you invest in creative and how you are able to measure, control, change, test, and continually improve your campaigns is now a bigger focus, but also with that focus comes new challenges. So just to review on this, you control it. It is the first touch point for marketers, and it is really has an untapped potential, a hugely untapped potential for optimization. And so when we talk about this, we're talking about something that is creative data. When you talk about clicks, impressions, things like that, these are 100% deterministic. There's no estimations taking place here. You can use these across iOS and Android, along with other data too, different operating systems, different channels. You might have different benchmarks, but you can still use this data holistically. And it also is going to tell you a story. As you talk about different concepts, different iterations, different elements that are using, you can use these to improve your marketing outcomes and your product outcomes altogether to really see what's driving the best growth. So in the end, nowadays, it's really the most important part of your marketing efforts. So let's talk a little bit about what this looks like now. You see there the rest in peace IDFA. In the past, you had your impression, your click, the install takes place. All of a sudden, you're getting an IDFA. You can track this IDFA through all the conversions that took place, pull that data either directly from the app, directly from your MMP, into your BI, and make a very easy to read dashboard around what each individual user is doing and how you can better optimize that. Now, once that install happens, a lot of this, if the user doesn't opt in, and we're seeing pretty low opt-in rates, once again, that depends on the vertical, the brand, kind of trustworthiness, but a lot of that data is now becoming anonymized in the Apple SKAD network backend. So that attribution is then going from Apple back to the individual ad network or marketing channel. And from there, there's a few different ways to get that data, whether it be either via your MMP. For a number of different networks, you can pull that data directly from the API and do things with it there. But in this, there's still some things that haven't changed. And if we kind of click next, we can see that there's still this deterministic user level data that's available. You can see it. You can see it on the ad level, on the creative level. And then from there, that is what is driving the anonymized campaign level data that is available. And you can build models around this. You can very easily see the impact of each of these impression drivers, click drivers on the different conversions or converted users that are taking place depending on your schema in the campaign level. So let's take that to a little bit further. And I want to go back to a slide from a webinar we actually did with Google that Google shared with us. And this is a really great slide because I think a lot of people are getting lost in the data of what's happening post-conversion, but forgetting about the huge impact that CTR can have. And so we're talking about here, and this is really how any of those click and forget or automation tools are doing your bid, your budgeting, and trying to optimize from there. But we see here that when you're putting your bid in, one of the main drivers that they're using is that click. They call it, projected conversion rate. Here, it would be the actions and the clicks. Clicks being something that you still have. And the better your click-through rate, and I want to stress this, with relevant ads, the better your click-through rate with relevant ads, the cheaper you're going to get into the options and the more effective your ads are going to be. The more the different channels are going to utilize these creatives and use those for scale. But even with this, we can see that creative optimization is still broken. We took a look at more than 15,000 creatives per day that are running through our system across our different partners, and we saw that close to 40% of spend goes to ad creatives that are underperforming. I mean, this alone shows just how much untapped potential there is for creative optimization. And this is why we developed the Bidalgo Creative Center. You can see here, only 26% of spend goes to overperforming ad creative. Even making changes of 4, 5, 6% on this can mean the difference between a really good week or a really bad week, really good month, or being able to scale a ton. So what is creative level data? We keep saying creative level data, creative data. I think there are really 3 main parts to this. The first would be ideation. The second is production. And the third is optimization or analysis. And I know we have 1, 2, 3 here. These are not really in any particular order. Some people start with the optimization analysis to feed their ideation. Some people start with ideation, take the Mad Men approach of coming up with crazy ideas and seeing what works and producing them. But each of these have different stakeholders that need to really work together to drive the best outcome. And inside of each of these, we want to focus on the creative usage, the ads, the campaigns, the geos, the platforms, the channels of where these creatives are being used, their performance, both holistically and in those individual places, and also the metadata to support that. That can be things like the video sizes, the dimensions, the video length, or maybe images, image sizes, or the different elements, backgrounds, anything you can really holistically bring together across your activity to help you focus where you want it to be. And having this data easily organized with unique points to support each goal is something that each of these stakeholders, each of these processes needs dashboards and organized and malleable data. And one of the things I would say is that I would put it to the UA side to really drive building these dashboards, building them for the creative team to be easily get the data that they need. Because I think we've all been in this situation where the creative team really goes above and beyond, and they do some research, they look at the creatives, and they try and come, with exactly where creatives have been used, and they, maybe they didn't track where they were used or how they were used, and the UA team says, oh, well, that doesn't tell the full story. So I really want to put it to the UA teams to build these dashboards for them. And by doing this, each of the individual stakeholders can bring their specialty to the table, whether it be creative people being creative and artistic, whether it be UA people figuring out where there might be opportunities. But once you have this, this is just the start. This is building a creative structured strategy to support these stages. And I say get started ASAP here because you're not going to do this on 5 of your 200 creatives and start getting insights. When you have this across 50, 100 over time, you're going to start getting insights from these. And all too often, I see people with, or different partners with things on the campaign level. All of a sudden, there's a really complex campaign level naming convention. That's great. It helps you on the campaign level. It's not really helping you on the creative level. If you see it on the ad level, that's really great in a lot of places. But in areas where an ad, let's just say Facebook example with AAA or dynamic creative optimization, DPA, placement asset customization, these places where you might be anywhere from 4 to 50 creatives, DPA could be thousands in one ad, and you're getting no data on those individual creatives that are taking place there. And below, we do just see a quick example of some of the things that are being tracked here. Things like what is the intended target source, or what was the CTA used at the end? What was the message? Did I use a voiceover or music, or maybe no music? Some people like tracking the creative sprints. Maybe it was a really good sprint. There was some difference there. You tried different processes, or brand campaigns or first product features, the different imagery. There's a million things, and it really comes back to you deciding both what does the creative team need to be successful, what does the UA team need to be successful, maybe even product people or creative strategists want more information. And from there, and I think one of the things that will be really cool is to be able to talk more about this in a second, what are the things that Gigantic is looking at? How are they looking at this and playing with really their high quality creatives there? Felix, anything you want to add on this about maybe things that you guys are tracking, you guys are utilizing, how you guys kind of built, or Emil, you'll go into more, but how you guys built a creative data strategy?
As you mentioned, we definitely take into account the CTR and the IPM or CVR and we complete the data with assumptions, as I mentioned before. In general, I think that I would say that for us, creative was always the main thing we focus on. I would say that when we did some optimization, it basically didn't move the needle so much. There's a kind of 10% different here and there when you optimize placement, you optimize audience, you shift budget from one audience to another. But eventually, what really moves the needle for us is creative, and we're refreshing our creatives on a weekly basis. We run many production, many shooting days. We do everything in-house, and we work with third-party vendors. And creative was always like the main thing we're focusing on, definitely.
And it sounds like, I think part of that is also, I mean, the slide here talks about it, but you have to have really clear ideas of what is successful and what isn't successful, knowing what to refresh, what not to refresh. And I guess, especially now with no user IDs, you said you have to take assumptions on what's happening with CTR. And luckily, you guys are CTR first, and I know you have more information on that in a second. But creating new benchmarks, creating ideas around what works in a user ID-less world is really important, because in Android you still have all of that data, and you should definitely utilize that data. We see people look across both, but sometimes in iOS you do have to either utilize model data or come up with some sort of like kind of impact analysis of how a creative performed once it was, or how a campaign performed once you added in new creatives. One thing I know I talked about this a little before, but I think there's been a trend in the industry for the last maybe 2 years or so around misleading ads, making clickbaity ads that might not have anything to do with your actual app. And if that's working for you, that's great. I think some of the first people to the industry to do it had tremendous success with it. But I would caution, especially in iOS, around using these, because they can mislead your creative data. You'll see really high CTRs that may not necessarily be contributing to any sort of campaign success. And then also, depending on your KPIs internally when you make creatives, these can really misdirect your production processes. You'll end up in a cycle of creating things that might have great CTR, but those are not driving any sort of real success. And you're investing not just money, but a lot of efforts internally. And we see this, if you look at creative behavior, when you upload creative sometimes, you'll see that great CTRs, when you upload them to campaigns, let's take in a UAC campaign, you'll see that UAC will start utilizing that creative for a lot of spend very quickly, because it sees success there based on the model of high CTR should drive conversions. And you'll end up with several days of this creative spending a lot, but maybe it takes a few days for any sort of machine learning algorithms, this is on any channel too, to realize this creative is actually having a negative impact, let's stop spending. And that's how you end up with a number of creatives, very high CTRs, very low percentage of spend, especially after the first few days. So now that we've talked about all this, what creative data is, I want to pass it off to Felix to talk about the secret sauce behind Gigantic, how they've been so successful, how they've been managed to really top the charts and scale, with numbers that are kind of unheard of over the last, few months.
Thanks, Matt. Really good stuff. Well, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about our game called Chloe. It's a super cool and unique mobile game. Will allow our users to take control of our real physical claw machines, which based here in Israel, and control them via their phone. The machine, as I mentioned, the machine's here in Israel, and they control it from anywhere, anytime. It's a 24/7 operation. It's a new gaming genre. It's different than any other game. And it's more complex when you try to penetrate, with the new game genre. So it's very challenging. But I, as a marketeer, I'm being like 12 years in the industry already. I like challenges, and and creative is the perfect way to deliver the message over a game. And I think that when IDFA is gone, I'll say it again, the creative plays a serious role in successful marketing campaigns, because basically it reminds me when it was like 10 years ago, when there was no strong algorithms. It was all like, you need to be super targeted in finding your audiences, and you need to show them the right creative and the right ad at the right time. The algorithms became more and more important in the past few years, and right now, when it's it's a totally different story right now, when you need to pinpoint your audience and deliver the right message. Basically, our creative approach allowed us to scale our marketing activities by 100% and effectively. Yes, we spent double within 4 months, and when all the advertisers just shifted budget to Android, and we're kind of unsure about iOS. We strove hard on iOS and we doubled our budget there, and eventually we ended up in the top 50 grossing apps in the US App Store, and the most downloaded games in the US App Store. So that was kind of impressive, I think. And again, optimizing and creating creative is crucial for your marketing activities, because you always want to show your audiences new concepts. Basically, especially in platforms like Google or Facebook, when you can't actually control the frequency, and you can't really control, you can know how much, but you can't control how many times a user sees your ad, especially in mobile app installs campaigns. So changing the creative and show them different content is crucial for success and improving your results. How do we create the creatives? We basically run our own shooting days. We make our own production. We work with third-party vendors. So if there are any creative agencies in the crowd, I mean, hit me up. Also, what's surprising about that it's you'll be surprised, because you can never know which creative will work. You can find a concept that in the beginning you'll think that it's not 100%, might not work, but eventually it can surprise you. That's why everything can work. Really, don't trust anything. Anything can work.
I think it's one thing I want to add. I think it's really cool that even now, we talk to different companies, and sometimes we're a few months in, and we saw the huge CPM drop the moment iOS 14 rolled out on iOS, and we saw a lot of companies pull back because they weren't sure how to track these things. They weren't sure how to, take advantage of it. But it's not like the users went anywhere, right? They were all still there doing the same thing, and you guys were really able to take advantage of that with clear benchmarks, a clear idea of what good creative meant to you guys, which is really it's a really interesting point.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, we were on a massive creative production also before IDFA changes start rolling out, because we saw that when we optimize our campaigns, it does improve our performance, but nothing serious. It just here and there you can have some improvements, but when there was a creative that blew up, it changed our numbers completely. It basically, it changed. It's like a totally different thing when a creative is succeeding and working well. You really feel it in your results. And I think that in general, marketeers keep forgetting that on the other side, they're we're showing our ads to people. you know, data is important. We dig into the data, it's super important. The numbers are basically everything. But in general, there are people on the other side, and they want to see, you know, you need to make them emotional, you need to make them laugh, you need to make them curious, you need to, you know, and by doing so, you use different creative types, and you try to, you know, try to connect to different audiences. Also now, when IDFA is gone, now the targeting become more and more complex. Facebook lookalikes are not working well as they were before. We see CTRs are dropping, and the war about the eyeballs. We're competing on eyeballs basically, and it's become more and more significant. We tried basically a few different approaches. We tried to, our current strategy is we're doing specific creatives per specific interest, per specific audience. And we're trying to, like I said, the war on CTR and the war on the results begins. And it does require more work, more creative production work from us. But it's worth it. This is like a huge tip. Try to like optimize your creative and try to fit the creative to the right audience, because it's crucial. It can significantly improve your results. Also, once you target like more narrow audiences, you need to make sure that the CPM doesn't jump, because as long as the audience more and more narrowed and targeted, the CPM may rise, which is something that advertising should be paying attention to. I think that in terms of analysis, I think that the data is not completely available for us right now. But again, we can use the data we have. First, we have the Android data. And as I mentioned, people are people. If people reacting to a certain creative on Android, they're more likely, also iOS, more likely to react to creative, to the same creatives. In addition, I think that all the biggest channels like Facebook and Google, Snap, TikTok, they all show you creative level data. It might be not 1000% accurate, but it's something. We need to rely on some numbers, and the rest you complete with assumptions. But you can definitely optimize your creatives, working with all the platforms itself, or tools like Bidalgo Center, the creative center of Bidalgo, which gives you like a rank for every creative you have, and then you can compare which one is working better, which one is you need to pause. And I think that the shifting in the industry right now should be from like optimize your audience and placements and so on, but also try to optimize more your creative and give more emphasis on that.
And there's just one question going back. You have a number of things on the slide around testing. Creative testing. You wrote sacrifice one of your campaigns for testing. Why? You only have 9. Why sacrifice
one? Because it's crucial. You need to know which creative is working better. You always, when you decide on a super aggressive creative production and creation, you always create and you always test. For example, we run we have an ad set. Okay, it's running as it is. we produced a new creative. So I want to test it on the same audience and the same metrics and the same settings as the current ad set I currently have, to know which creative is actually better for this specific audience. In addition, as I mentioned, we're relying on Android. We see what's working on Android, and then we apply it on iOS campaigns. Another technique we're using is targeting basically a country, and we're shifting 50% of the company's budget to a certain creative, and then on our database we can see if the results are improving or not, the results, the trend, if it's negative, if it's positive, and it's allow us to like know if the creative performs well or not. And in addition, it's like it never ends. You know, you build one creative and then you try to like play with the scenes. You put this scene on first and then last, and then you see what's going on and how it affects your performance. So it basically never ends. Testing is never ending.
It seems like you guys figured out a way to actually connect, the incrementality in your in-app analytics with this mini test of, targeting a specific place with these creatives. What is the incrementality there? Which is a really cool method of, even though we don't have that deterministic link anymore, we can still actually look at what's happening if we take a small enough sample size.
Yeah, definitely. Also recommend if you're doing it like in the US, for example, which is a big country, you can go for a specific state, because you don't want to shift like you're in 50% of the entire budget to one creative that may not work. So you can do it gradually by starting with one state or a few states and then check incrementality, definitely.
And so I think let's take it to the next slide and actually take a look at one of the creatives that you put together. It had some really interesting different iterations and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, this creative, you see the results: 20% higher CTR, 50% lower CPI, 30% higher ROAS. This was a creative we did a variety of tests on. First, we put the creative is like starting with the delivery guy and the door open, and then the delivery guy. Make more sense to to place it in the end. That's what we thought. There's a girl laying on the couch playing the game, and boom, the delivery guy comes up, knocks on the door. She opens the door, and then she started opening a bunch of prizes. We said, okay, we were happy with the performance, but what if we do it we put this scene at the beginning and let's see what happens. So we make the shift and our numbers just jumped. It was a serious change and serious improvement, just for moving one scene to another spot. That's why I'm so like I'm thinking that creative is real. People are underestimating in the power of creative sometimes.
And I have to ask, not specifically on this one, but was once you had this learning about, okay, my user audience responds to, or my CTR, everything is improving when I move this scene to the front. How were you able to kind of replicate that success? Or did you take that learning to the next production day or the next filming day and say, hey, like, how can we do this again?
Definitely. We learn from every creative we make, and if it's working and if it's not working. Basically, we started to we did many tests. We did like production, like high quality production that costs a lot of money, and with crazy concepts and brilliant ideas, and we took it like for a walk, as they say. And eventually we realized that the simple shooting days where you just show a real game that, you know, this is the game basically. You play, you open the door, the delivery guy is there, we ship the prizes straight to user's doorstep. And in terms of delivering the message, it's even when when I'm telling people in person what the game is about, they're like, what, how, what? They're like, they can't really understand immediately what it's all about. But so imagine how hard it is do it in 15 seconds.
Yeah, it's
but we
yeah.
definitely use we learn, we take specific elements and we apply it to our next videos. For example, this delivery guy with the door open, we have a few videos that that we used in the same scene but different actors, and they're all performing well.
That's amazing. You took this, who doesn't like prizes, right? And you took that and you said, let's put that in the beginning, and competing for eyeballs, that's how you do it.
Definitely.
Find something that connects and put it in the beginning.
Yep.
So let's dig a little bit into, here's just an example for you guys if you want to see kind of more on this creative. You can see prizes in the beginning and then more going throughout the end. And I know, Felix, as you mentioned, there's a bunch of different iterations you guys did of this, different orders, different actors. And it's really amazing how you're able to take one thing and run with it.
And I'll say one more thing, like about what I said before with like matching the creative to the audience you're targeting. For example, you see here, you see Dembo, you see Disney figures, right? You see Disney prizes. So we basically changed the prizes in there for all the brands we have. For example, for Nintendo users, we showed a Nintendo ad. We show Nintendo prizes in there. For Disney, for users who like Disney, we showed this ad with Disney prizes in. And it does move the needle, and it does improve the results, definitely.
It's amazing that you found a way to really target specific users without necessarily having to rely on the algorithms, or at least you're helping the algorithms even in the different channels. So that's really cool.
You need to help the machine somehow.
Yeah. Cool. So before we kind of finish up and hop into some of the questions we see coming in, let's go through a little bit of what this looks like in Bidalgo. So as we talked about this, on the user acquisition side, when we talk about where creative was used, how it was used, the performance data behind it, what I like to call opportunity cost can be make or break. The first step would be optimizing out things that aren't performing well. And here we just see, Felix mentioned it before, actually, the creative rank. For those of you who don't know or don't use the Bidalgo platform, it's a little bit of machine learning always running in the background, looking at your creatives and then ranking them against each other based on your main KPIs, whether it be ROAS, CPA, IPMs, anything like that. And here's an example of a quick way of seeing, this is sorted by spend. Very quickly, you can quickly identify, okay, creative being used in a number of places. Maybe this creative, 10% of spend, but only being used in 3 places. Maybe it's misleading, maybe it's a great CTR or something like that. But whatever my main KPI is, this is not delivering results. I want to quickly remove this. And what do I want to replace it with? So if we go forward a tiny bit, we'll see that you also have the opportunity to rank things in a different way. And this is something that I think very often, whether through Bidalgo or not through Bidalgo, gets missed out on. The creatives that are doing really well, but because they're not spending thousands of dollars a day, they're not spending very much, they usually get missed by UA teams. And here we just see, we sorted this to the rank, and we could have sorted it based on some sort of KPI also. But lots of creatives with strong performance, strong opportunity, not getting very much spend at all, and hardly being used. And we saw before some of the other ones that are performing well were used in 10, 15, 20 different places across our different channels. These have hardly had the opportunity. And when you're investing so much time across different, creating new creatives all the time, each of those creatives doesn't just have a cost on what you're spending tested, it also has a cost on how much you're investing, the man hours or woman hours that have been put into this. And every time you have creatives that are a missed opportunity, it can really hurt you from reaching your main goal or your main KPIs, or it can be the difference between a good week and a bad week. And as we go forward, beyond just the UA side, how do we use this in our production planning? For feedbacking the creative team. And a lot of times, as I mentioned before, the UA team, expects the creative team to come with ideas. This really has to be a back and forth. And I highly recommend to UA teams to isolate what's working for your creative team to focus on those things. Here, just in this example, isolate by network, certain amount of spend, a certain amount of seniority, how many days a creative has been running, but it doesn't have to be spend or seniority. It can be impressions, it can be installs, it can be CTR, it can be different channels, whatever it might be, different countries. And this way, they can bring their talent to the table and they can say, hey, like from an artistic standpoint, we're seeing this. And it really helps with the ideation. It helps them be involved. And you filter to specifically what they need to see instead of having them look through Excel spreadsheets or look through tons of data. And it can be really helpful for driving that. And it doesn't just have to be what we were looking at before around the actual creatives itself. It can also be the themes or the ideas or whatever is needed for them around, it could be the products or, what was shown in the first 3 seconds. Is it a delivery guy or not a delivery guy? Those can be easy things for the creative team to now run with and ideate on. And as Felix said, you never know what's going to be that next winner until you try it. Because we've all, everybody in the industry has seen some crazy creatives become your winners. So when we talk about then production planning, I think a lot of times people forget that there's also where a creative is being used, and there's a lot of real data that still exists. Here we're looking at networks. You still have IPM on the network level, on the marketing channel level. You still have CTR, you still have ROAS or revenue or CPA within the confines of SKAd network attribution. So here you really can see not just how much spend is going to different channels to see what you want to focus on, but also how many creatives are there. In this example, Facebook, 129 assets, looks pretty healthy, looks like it's scaled. And we see the opposite in Snapchat where only 29 creatives, but it looks like there's a lot of potential there. Maybe I do want to focus a creative sprint on a more UGC or Snapchat-esque, creative focus. And I can then even drill down from there. Beyond where I'm scaling, what are the sizes I need? What are the creative types I need to take a deeper look at? Here, maybe you want to focus on CTR or use some sort of model of data like IPM. And this way I know, all too often, creative teams, they come up with a new idea and they're out and they make 5 different sizes, and maybe they even make different video lengths for this one idea before you even know if this idea is worth it. And by isolating into your sweet spots around video length or around sizes, you can save a lot of creative time to invest in ideation or other things too. So I guess, what is the actual outcome of all of this? There's not one answer, right? It really depends on your specific bottleneck, where you are in your application. Are you planning for a scale? Are you at a high place and you're really focused on maintaining? And there can be a lot of different things here. You could have a reduction in the number of creatives produced because you realize that you want to focus more on quality. You're creating a lot of creatives that aren't getting very much spend, aren't doing well. Why don't we focus more on new ideas? Or you could increase the number of creative produced because you see that you have some good creatives, but you don't have enough of them, and you need to do a lot more. There's lots of different options here. Sometimes when you have a really strong marketing tech stack there around creative, you can actually do more live testing. So before I push things into my full campaigns, I want to before pushing things into beta testing, I have an idea, a concept, I want to just put it out there, and I can quickly see the impact of that on campaigns, or the opposite, where I have really stable campaigns doing really well, and instead of doing spray and pray, which is throw lots of creatives and see what sticks, I only want to put the highest quality in because my campaigns are very stable. And it really depends on where you are. But what's important is having all the data organized and valuable so you can detect what is the issue with your creative, not just the creatives themselves, but the creative process or how you can improve or be more efficient. Cool. So thank you guys so much for sticking with us on this. We do have a bunch of questions here, so we'll move on to those. So I guess the first one over to Felix. How do you think Claudia's journey or strategy is different from other apps? Do you think it's similar, different? In your experience in the industry, how do you guys, what can people take away?
Well, as I mentioned before, we're running a new genre in mobile gaming. So again, the biggest challenge was to deliver the message. Grasping the concept that they can actually control real claw machine with their phone is mind-blowing every time, and again, showing that with the 15-second or 30-second ad was definitely challenging, but it was cool at the same time. So creative is actually for our benefit. Almost every creative we're making is unique compared to other games out there. So it's a big advantage for us.
And I think, you touched on this a second ago, but you guys are one of the few apps, not really, I don't want to say gaming because it's connected reality, but you have a physical product, right? Like people are actually getting something, and it's a differentiator, but also just in terms of your profitability and marketing, if you target the wrong users, that can cost you even more than just the marketing spend, right? You're sending things to people who maybe long-term won't be profitable. So how do you adapt to iOS 14, now that you can only track users for maybe 1 day, 2 days, whatever it might be?
Well, you're right. Basically, finding quality users is definitely more challenging right now when the entire traffic appears as organic and there's very limited data. We're working with what we have, and we're completing the missing data with assumptions, and we try to get a better picture from where our quality users are coming from. It is more challenging, but it's not a dead end. If you work with smart events, smart in-app event schema, so you can definitely locate and point on users that are more likely to convert. Definitely, there is enough data to overcome this challenge.
It sounds like between what you said before around, you guys are actually looking a lot at the in-app data you have. It may not necessarily be tied to marketing, but you found a way to tie those together, which is, or not really tie, but assume certain levels of incrementality, which is really cool. And you combine that with the proxy metrics you said is makes it pretty easy, or a lot easier to see where you want to be. We have another one in here, and I think this is a really interesting one. There's often this idea that being brand centric, or combining live production in the world of mobile apps, so it doesn't really go with being performance driven. So how do you guys go about really mixing the two, telling your story, but also focusing on performance?
Yeah, well, we basically separating our ads, our branding ads and our UA ads, because also I think it's more right. It's better to separate, as UA ads are more like, you know, act now, download it now, do everything now, instantly. And branding, when you come with branding creative, you want to tell your story. You want the users to know that you exist and that you're awesome. And what we do is when we see a good trend in our branding videos, we just edit them and you know, make just flip them into performance ads. We just we're adding more gameplay, we're adding more you know, more headlines, like more CTA buttons, and then we make it like 15 seconds, 30 seconds. And with smart editing, it's definitely possible to connect between the two.
I guess how often do you get surprised that you guys had an idea, you film it, you think it's more branding, it's more gonna just it'll do that, and then all of a sudden you guys go, oh, let's actually pull this over.
90%
What?
of the time. 90%
That's
of the time we get surprised. We're always arguing, oh, I like that one, oh, I think this one won't work. And eventually what's working is the creative. Nobody thought that it would work. This has happens many, many times. That's what I meant, that you can never know which creative would work and which one not. That's why I think that advertisers should definitely use third-party vendors and never stop creating more concepts and more ideas. And you don't need to go so far. As they say, simplicity is the new complicity. It is what it is.
It's amazing. It sounds like you guys are finding a way. I guess you guys have figured out that people actually, even in the performance side, they want a story. They want, all too often in gaming, people talk about, ugly performs. Don't worry about how pretty it is. If it performs. And you guys are kind of learning the opposite now, that you found your audience and people want to see stuff that looks good, and they want to, see a story and see the value they're going to get, which is
imagine they see hundreds of ads on a daily basis, endless amount of content. Your content need to shine.
It makes sense in a lot of the social channels now. You're not just competing against other ads, you're competing against influencers, celebrities, user-generated fun content. Everybody's a content producer now, and so you have to stand out as an ad or as a brand.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we have time for one more. This one's a little more on the technical side, so we'll end with that. But on creative testing, what are some of the red flags you look out for to take a creative out of rotation or optimize it out, compared to what about green flags for creatives that you see are going to scale and you want to utilize more?
Well, the larger media channels actually gives you results per creative. If it's Facebook, if it's Google, most of this data is modeled and might not be like 100% accurate, but you can feel very confident relying on it. Also, Bidalgo's Creative Center really helps us to, finding the green flags and the red flags. Also, the Bidalgo tool, it allows you to see specific trend of a specific creative, and once we see a negative trend, so we know that's a red flag and we need to act, or change its thumbnail, or change like move one scene to another, or make some tweaks to make it work before we pause it. And if it's necessary and we did everything we could and it's still not improving, so I guess it's time for a refreshment.
Amazing. So it looks like we are coming up just about an hour. So once again, Felix, thank you so much for your time and the effort you put into this. I think this was full of, chock full of tons of information. Any last thoughts?
Thank you guys for having me. My words for everyone is don't save on tech. It's important. It can save you. It can help you measure better. It can help you scale. And never stop creating. Always have new creatives on the pipe.
Yeah, throw new ideas out there. Don't be afraid. And as you said, if there's any agencies out there with some interesting ideas, talk to Felix, because always down to try something new. All right, everybody have a great rest of the day, and feel free to reach out with any questions. And you can reach us out through our website, or if you're working with Bidalgo, your CSM. My email is matthew@bidalgo.com. And looking forward to hearing about any further questions or follow-ups anybody has.
Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you very much, everyone.